At the reception, my dad gave a toast. To my real kids, the ones who make us proud. My brother laughed. My name was never said. I smiled, walked to the gift table, retrieved the $5,000 honeymoon check I left, and whispered to the bride, "Enjoy the silence instead." My brother followed me out begging. I kept walking. Then, behind me, the DJ announced, "Weddings are a performance. I've always known that." What I didn't realize until that day was that sometimes the performance is just a thin curtain hiding the rot behind the stage. And if you're the one who doesn't play their part right, they'll let you know fast. My younger brother Caleb was the golden child. Always had been. When he got engaged to Stella, everyone went full production mode. My parents offered up their backyard for the rehearsal dinner. My cousins flew in from Texas, and my aunt designed the invitations. Meanwhile, I was asked for something less photogenic. Money. $5,000 to be exact. For the honeymoon. They'd already spent too much on the venue. Stella's dress had cost more than my car, and they wanted to do Bali, right? My parents said they were overextended, and Caleb came to me like it was already decided. Said I was the only one in the family comfortable enough to help. I make a decent living in tech. Not flashy, but solid. So, I sent it quietly. No lecture, no strings. The day of the wedding, I arrived alone, like I always do at these things. Nobody offered to sit with me. No one saved a seat. I brought a card with the check inside, placed it on the gift table under a pile of boxes wrapped in white and gold paper. I wasn't expecting fireworks, just a basic acknowledgement. The ceremony passed in a blur of choreographed tears and drone footage. At the reception, my dad stood to give a toast. He cleared his throat, held up his glass, and grinned. To my real kids, the ones who make us proud. The room exploded with laughter. Caleb almost fell out of his chair. Stella giggled into her champagne. Even my mom smiled and clapped. I waited for him to correct himself, to say something like, "Just kidding. Love you too, Mason." But he didn't. He moved on to a story about Caleb's high school football days. I wasn't mentioned once. I sat there and smiled. That's the part I hate most. How automatic it was. How trained I've been to sit through it all like it's fine. After a while, I stood up, walked calmly across the hall to the gift table. No one noticed. I found their card, opened it, and slipped the check back into my pocket. Stella saw me. Her eyes darted toward Caleb, then back to me. I leaned in and said just loud enough for her to hear, "Enjoy the silence instead." Then I turned and left. Caleb followed me out into the parking lot. He called my name over and over, asked what I was doing, told me not to make a scene. I didn't say a word, just kept walking. As I reached my car, I heard the DJ over the speakers. "Well, folks, no need to panic. Just a little bit of drama to spice up the night. Let's hear it for awkward family moments." Then came the music. Loud, fast, cheerful. The crowd cheered. He started cracking jokes about open bars and in-laws. Everyone moved on like I'd never been there at all. And still, that wasn't the end. Not even close. I didn't go straight home after leaving the wedding. I drove for hours. No music, no calls, just the low hum of the engine and the sound of tires cutting through silence. Eventually, I ended up at this old lake about an hour out of town. I used to go there when I was in college, whenever I needed to think, without someone talking over me. I sat on a bench and watched the dark water shift under the moonlight, thinking how familiar it felt. Beautiful on the surface, cold underneath. My phone started vibrating just after midnight. Missed calls stacked one on top of the other. Caleb was first, then my mom, then Stella, then more. My uncle. A couple of cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. The messages started pouring in too. Most were some version of, "What the hell? What's wrong with you? Why would you ruin the wedding?" I didn't answer. Around 9 the next morning, the tone changed. I got a long, angry message from my mom about how Caleb and Stella were devastated, how the atmosphere at the reception shifted after I left, and how people were whispering. She said my exit was childish and cruel, and that I should have thought about the embarrassment I caused them. I read it 3 times, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Not even a little. Then came the message that told me everything I needed to know. My father, never much for subtlety, sent me one line. We all agreed that money was a wedding gift. You don't get to take it back. We expect you to return it immediately. There it was. Not, are you okay? Or, what happened? Or even, we need to talk. Just a demand. Like I was a vending machine they'd kicked and now wanted a refund from. I texted back. You assumed. That's your mistake. A minute later, he replied, You've embarrassed the family. I didn't bother responding. By noon, it was clear this wasn't going to be a one-day thing. Caleb finally got through. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. His voice was calm. Too calm. Like someone trying not to spook a bear. He said they'd already booked everything. The flights, the hotel, the excursions. He said I knew how much they needed that trip. How much they'd counted on me. And how cruel it was to rip it away. He said it wasn't just a gift. It was part of a plan. A family plan. I let him talk. Then I asked, You mean the plan where I pay and you pretend I don't exist? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, This isn't you. You don't do things like this. I told him maybe he never really knew me. Maybe he just liked having someone around who never said no. Then I hung up. That night, my mom called again. This time, sobbing. She said Stella's parents had heard, and they were mortified that people had started gossiping about how the brothers stormed out with the check and how it made them all look like trashy drama magnets. She said, I had a chance to fix it before things got worse. I asked what that meant. And then, without missing a beat, she said, If you're going to act like you're not one of us, we'll make it official. Don't expect any part of the family investments going forward. There it was. The real reason for the panic. I wasn't just their quiet, dependable son anymore. I was suddenly a threat to the whole image they built. The black sheep they couldn't control. The one who decided he wasn't going to stay in the background anymore. I looked at the text a few more times before turning off my phone completely. They thought they were punishing me. They thought this was the worst they could do. But they didn't understand something yet. I wasn't even close to done. The next morning, I turned my phone back on and watched the flood continue. My voicemail was full. The family group chat, which had been mostly wedding photos and forced enthusiasm, had now turned into a tribunal. My cousin Jenna asked if I was having a breakdown. My aunt wanted to mediate before things got uglier. My dad hadn't said much more since his threat, but he didn't need to. The others were delivering the message for him now. Then Caleb texted. And this time he wasn't calm. We need that money back. You knew what it was for. This isn't funny anymore. I stared at it for a while before replying. It was never funny. You just didn't care until you lost something. 15 minutes later, I got an email. Not a message. An actual email. It was from my dad. He attached a summary of verbal agreement, stating that the money I gave was discussed in the family chat, that I had agreed to fund the honeymoon. I hadn't. And that I was now in breach of an informal commitment that the family had relied on. He CC'd my mom and Caleb. I laughed out loud in my kitchen alone. Then I responded with 2 sentences. There was no agreement. I took back what was mine. That was all I said. Later that afternoon, I got a call from my mom. She didn't start with a hello, just launched in. You need to send the money back. They're canceling things. Stella's parents are furious. They said this whole thing looks trashy, like we can't even afford our own son's wedding. I stayed quiet. She kept going. Said I was being selfish. Said I'd always been touchy. But this was beyond that. Said if I didn't return the money, it would be proof that I was cutting myself off from the family completely. That I'd chosen this. I finally said, No, you made the choice. You just didn't think I'd ever respond. She told me I was being dramatic, that I was hurting people who loved me. And that's when I told her something I hadn't said out loud before. I've been useful, not loved. That's the difference. She didn't argue. She just hung up. That evening, I got a voicemail from Caleb. No yelling this time. He sounded defeated. Said they were losing the resort booking, that they'd already paid for part of it, and now it was gone. He told me I'd ruined their plans. Maybe their whole beginning. He said something that stuck with me. You didn't just take the money. You made a point to hurt us. That one actually made me pause, because he was right. I had made a point. For years, I'd let things slide. The snide comments, the exclusion, the way they used my help and never looked back. I was always the one who kept it together, who didn't make trouble, but not anymore. And that terrified them. By the end of the week, the group chat was silent. No more pleas. No more arguments. Just a single message from my father sent at 10:03 p.m. on a Friday night. You're out. Don't come asking for anything. I left it on red. But I wasn't angry anymore. Something was shifting. And they had no idea what was coming. A few mornings after the silence started, I heard a knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. And I wasn't in the mood for more drama. But something about the timing made me open it anyway. No one was there. Just 2 envelopes lying on the mat. One had the family lawyer's name printed in the return address. The other had my mom's handwriting on the front. I opened the lawyer's first. It was short, cold, and calculated. A formal notification that I was being removed from the family trust effective immediately. The investments, the property shares, the backup accounts I was always vaguely told would be ours someday. Gone. No room for discussion. No signature from my dad. Just his accountant and a stamped seal. Honestly, it didn't surprise me. I'd expected it since the second they realized I wouldn't just give the money back. What did surprise me was the second envelope. My mom had written it by hand. That alone told me it wasn't a quick reaction. Her handwriting was neat, overly careful, like she'd rewritten it a few times. It started soft. Said she hoped I was okay, which felt like a test balloon to see if I'd cave. But then it turned sharp. She wrote that I'd changed. That I used to be the steady one, the son they could rely on to smooth things over, not cause them. She said she couldn't understand why I'd throw away everything. Why I'd go this far just to make a point. And then she said something I read 3 times. If you needed attention that badly, there were better ways to ask for it. That hit different. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment laced with disbelief. Like she genuinely couldn't grasp why I wouldn't just take the punchline again and keep smiling. She closed the letter by saying they were protecting what was left of the family, and if I wasn't going to be part of it, then they had to move forward without me. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table. And I made 2 lists. First list, everything I've done for this family. It filled 2 pages. All the things no one asked for but everyone expected. Paying for things. Showing up. Keeping quiet. Remembering birthdays no one remembered back. Driving 2 hours just to help Caleb fix his furnace because he didn't want to call a professional. Sitting through dozens of family dinners where I was the only one asked about work just to make them feel better about Caleb's lack of direction. Second list. Everything they did for me. That one stayed mostly blank. I left the list on the table and went to the balcony to get some air. That's when the buzzer rang. It was Caleb. I almost didn't answer it, but I needed to see what version of him would show up. Angry, begging, or fake forgiving. He looked rough. Hoodie, red eyes, holding a manila folder like it had weight to it. He didn't ask to come in, just said, "You need to see something." I let him talk. Inside the folder were printed screenshots and email threads between him and Stella before the wedding, planning stuff. At first, I didn't get it. Then I saw it. An email from Stella sent to Caleb 2 months before the wedding. Let Mason cover the honeymoon. He wants to feel needed. Otherwise, he'll start pulling away again. He does this. Just give him a role. Another. Honestly, we're doing him a favor. He wants to be close to the family so badly. He'll feel important if we make it look like he's helping, and it saves us a ton. Caleb looked ashamed. He said he hadn't seen those emails until now, that Stella had handled most of the honeymoon logistics and used their shared drive to back up all the wedding plans. He said he was going through the folders when he saw them. I didn't say anything. Then he said, "I think I married someone who never saw you as a person, just a wallet." And I think we all got used to that too. I still didn't speak. I just stared at the papers. He stood there holding the folder like he wanted me to do something with it. Burn it. Frame it. Throw it back at him. I did none of those things. Then he said one more thing before he left. She said you were always desperate to belong. I think we just liked that you never pushed back. He left the folder on my counter. I didn't follow him. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care what came next. After Caleb left, I sat with that folder for a long time. I didn't reread the emails. I didn't need to. I remembered every word, not because they were surprising, but because they confirmed something I'd been avoiding for years. I was useful to them, not loved. They didn't want me happy. They wanted me quiet, convenient, and reliable. That night, I opened a new document on my laptop and started writing out a plan. Not for revenge, not for any dramatic confrontation. A plan for myself. I listed what I wanted to do now that I wasn't obligated to perform for people who saw me as background noise. I signed up for a language course I'd been putting off for years. I booked a solo trip to Ireland. I unsubscribed from every group text and email thread with my family's name on it. I blocked a few numbers, including my mother's, and when I looked at the folder again, I didn't feel anything. Just clarity. A week passed. Then, too, no calls. No surprise visits. Then my dad emailed me. The subject line just said, "Follow up on trust decision." The message was cold and professional. He explained that removing me from the trust had financial implications, and that I should have considered long-term consequences before making such a dramatic choice. He finished by reminding me that family is about loyalty, and that without loyalty, there's no foundation to stand on. I replied with one sentence, "You only care about loyalty when someone stops serving you." The next day, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't pick up, but they left a voicemail. It was my mom. She sounded panicked, said things were falling apart, that Caleb and Stella weren't doing well, that Stella had stepped away for a while to process things. She said my father was trying to liquidate a property early and it wasn't going well. Then she said, "This is what happens when we're not united." I listened to that part twice. That was the moment I realized they'd never really been a unit. They just leaned on the one person they thought would never leave. And when I finally walked away, the whole thing cracked. A few days later, Caleb messaged me again. He said he moved out. Said he wasn't sure if the marriage was going to make it. Said Stella blamed me for everything unraveling, but he didn't know what to think anymore. I told him he'd figure it out. He asked if we could meet up sometime. I said, maybe, but I didn't mean it. Instead, I focused on building something for myself. I started a small business consulting gig on the side, just for fun. Turns out, when you stop trying to be everything for everyone else, you get real time back. I hit the gym regularly. I started cooking again. I met new people who didn't know anything about my family and didn't care. They liked me just for me. No strings. No debt to pay. A month later, my dad sent a message through a mutual friend. He said the family was open to talking again. If I was willing to apologize. I laughed when I read it. Not the polite kind. The deep, real kind. The kind that makes you breathe easier after. That was the day I finally replied to nothing. Not even to say no. I just lived. And they hated it. It's been 7 months since I walked out of Caleb's wedding with the honeymoon money. 7 months since the toast, the DJ's cover-up, the envelopes on my doorstep, and the last voicemail from my mother trying to play the collapse of our family like it was somehow my fault. I haven't spoken to any of them since. Not once. And the strange part? I've never felt more clear-headed. I live in a better apartment now downtown. Quieter building. Less drama. I get up early, work with clients I actually like, travel when I feel like it, and I'm not answering to anyone. I've made friends who don't know me as the brother of Caleb or son of Rick and Diane. I've stopped trying to explain the silence. It just is. A few weeks ago, I heard from Jenna, my cousin. She asked if I was still on the outs with the family. I didn't answer directly. She ended up sending a few screenshots of messages from the group chat I'm no longer in. Mostly harmless. But I saw a few lines that made me smile. Apparently, Caleb moved back in with my parents temporarily. Of course, Stella moved out for space, and they're in counseling now. The honeymoon never got rescheduled. My dad's antique business is down because they lost their website when I took my name off the domain registration. They're trying to find someone new, but no one can get the layout right. They've had to sell one of the investment properties, the one I used to manage repairs for. Jenna added this in her last message. You'd think they'd be mad, but honestly, they're mostly confused you haven't come crawling back yet. That one stuck with me. Because that's it, really. That's the part that gets them. Not that I embarrassed them. Not that I ruined the wedding or took my money back. It's that I stopped playing along. I didn't come back. I didn't try to fix things. They never thought I'd survive without them. And now, I'm doing better than ever. So last night, I sat on my balcony. Same view I've seen for months now. And I wrote it all down. Everything. The wedding. The toast. The envelope. The folder Caleb brought. The cold letters. The silence. And I looked at the last line I wrote. This is as low as it gets. Not for me. For them. 2 months of silence passed. Not the kind you fight through, but the kind that lets you breathe again. No massage. No sudden knocks at my door. No unexpected drama. I thought it was over. I'd moved on. Or at least, I believed I had. Until one Tuesday morning, an unfamiliar name popped up in my inbox. Cameron Hunt. Subject: regarding Caleb and Stella. Urgent. I didn't open it right away. I wasn't in a hurry to revisit that world. But something about the subject line felt off. Cold. Legal. I opened it. Cameron introduced himself as Stella's attorney. Her separation attorney. Apparently, things had escalated fast between her and Caleb. Divorce wasn't official yet, but she had filed for formal separation and was seeking control over what she called contributions made toward the marriage by external parties. Specifically, she was trying to classify my honeymoon check as a marital gift, which meant she wanted the $5,000. Still, attached to the email were a few scanned pages from their prenup. I didn't even know they had one, but there it was, buried in the wording. A clause about wedding gifts, intended for joint use. They were arguing that my money qualified. And just like that, I was pulled back into a mess I had no intention of ever touching again. I forwarded the email to a lawyer I knew from a startup I'd consulted with. She read the message, then called me laughing. Her exact words were, "This is legally pathetic, but just to be safe, I'll draft a response." 3 days later, Cameron replied. Their claim was being withdrawn. No apology. No explanation. Just a formality. But I knew that meant Stella's plan had failed. And someone, probably Caleb, had told her I'd never go down without a fight. That night, I got a message from Caleb. It said, "She's leaving. She's taking everything she can. They're saying it's your fault." I didn't respond. An hour later, another came in. "Mom said you poisoned her against us, that you've been working to tear the family apart. They're rewriting everything." That, I believed. Not because I had, but because that's what they do. They can't face their own rot, so they invent a villain. I just made it easy by walking away. I didn't respond to that message either. A few days passed. Then Jenna texted me out of nowhere. She told me Caleb had moved back home. Said my dad told him he wasn't focused enough to stay involved in the family business. My mom was supposedly in full meltdown mode. crying to anyone who would listen about how everything changed when Mason turned on us. According to Jenna, they'd started liquidating small things. Stocks, some heirlooms, maybe one of the condos they'd been renting out. Quietly, of course. Pride doesn't allow announcements like that. And then she dropped something I didn't see coming. They want to sue you. Apparently, my dad had floated the idea of filing something. Anything. Just to make a point. Even if it didn't hold. They wanted to remind Mason who he's dealing with. I laughed when I read that out loud. Alone in my apartment. It was so on brand, it could have been a scene from a bad movie. I told Jenna they better not waste the last of their money chasing someone who stopped caring. Later that week, I went to dinner with someone new. No expectations. Just a night out with a person who didn't know a thing about my last name, or the mess I used to call a family. Halfway through dinner, while she was talking about a trip to Portugal, my phone lit up. Caleb again. This time, just one sentence. You were right. We were never people to them. Just props. I didn't open the message. I flipped the phone face down and left it there. Because by then, I finally understood something that had taken years to sink in. Some people aren't supposed to come with you when you get better. And letting go of them isn't cruel. It's survival.